Greetings, everyone, and a warm welcome to Breaking Boundaries. I am Talumba Katawala, the Employee Brand Manager at Technip Energies. I am happy to be your host for the one-year anniversary episode of our podcast. Today, we will take you on a journey to the beautiful state of Tamil Nadu, located in the southern part of India. Known for its scenic landscape and long coastlines, joining us today is Manikandan Narayanan, the head of business and technology for Technip Energies in the Asia Pacific region. We delve into the career journey of Mani, an experienced engineer who has worked in Technip Energies for 18 years now. Mani's journey started in the field of aromatics and petrochemicals, plant operations, and technical services. Mani pivoted then his focus towards design engineering. He has traversed across different countries, including India, Malaysia, Europe, and other Asia-Pacific countries. Tune in as Mani shares his valuable insights and experiences in this episode. Hello, Mani. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Feeling top of the world, but thank you for the good introduction. I'm glad to be in the podcast today.
So, Mani, as we're getting started, can you please introduce us to you, yourself, your background, and your journey so far, and tell us how you got here.
Okay, it's a long journey, of course. So I was born in a place called Neyveli, or Neyveli Lignite Corporation, as it used to be known, which is about 200 kilometers south of Chennai in the state of Tamil Nadu, and that is one of the highly industrialized states in southern India. It has large coal-based, lignite-based power plants and a few chemical industries associated with it. After finishing my graduation in chemical engineering, I started my career in an aromatics plant, aromatics, petrochemicals, and then moved up to ethylene, which was quite interesting. And then I moved to specialty chemicals. That was the first 11 years of my career. And then I switched to design and engineering because that was my area of interest always. Since 2001, I've been heavily involved on the design and engineering field. I've worked with a lot of industry majors in India and before joining Technip Malaysia in 2005. And I always had a passion for technology, plant design and engineering, process calculations, engineering calculations, which then led me to come into this consulting contracting field like Technip Energies. Now, today, my job in Technip Energies is to lead business and project development for technology-driven projects, mainly in the energy transition, and which also covers liquefied natural gas, hydrogen, CO2 management, refining, petrochemicals, sustainable chemicals, all in the Asia-Pacific region.
Wow. That's an interesting background. So you grew up surrounded by machinery and engineering, and so did your father or someone in your family have any kind of influence in your life? I know when we first met, you mentioned that your father was also an engineer. So Did that influence you? Did your surroundings influence you or contribute to shaping your view of today and your career today?
Yeah, sure. Because my father was a chemical engineer himself. So he was a chemical engineer from 1952. So he used to work in the public sector, and he was a specialist expert, I would say, in ammonia, fertilizers, and all the lignite-based chemicals. And I would even say that he was a person ahead of his time. Back 40 years ago, back in 1982 or 83, he started promoting the idea of decarbonization of ammonia plants, especially coal-based ammonia plants. And he was even, at the time, he was a bit critical about the CO2 emissions from the ammonia plant. And he developed his own concept, did the engineering with a team of people. He was the chief engineer of research and development at the time. To have a decarbonization in the ammonia plant, he set up a small plant to capture the CO2 with the intention of supplying that CO2, purifying and liquefying that CO2 to be supplied for the soft drink manufacturers, ice cream producers in that place. And he even got an approval from his management to supply that CO2 free of cost. So it was like a charity work, and that really built up the business in that area at a time when, back in the 70s, 80s, when Coca-Cola was re-entering India, and it was a big challenge for the small companies. This was a big boost for them, and I think they still remain grateful for that. And he also gave me an advice to follow the path of artificial intelligence. Back in 1990, when I was finishing my engineering, he said I should follow artificial intelligence or get into environmental engineering. Okay, I did not follow any of that because at the time opportunities were not that much, and I was not very much fancied about computers in those days. And his recommendation of artificial intelligence came in at the time when computers were just growing.
Wow.
And we come up from a family of academicians. Many of my uncles, my aunts, they were all in the academic field, and some of them were already in computer science in those days. And all in all, I would say, yes, he was my first mentor. He was my source of inspiration. And also the career progression is concerned, his advice was the first 10 years, work in various operating plants so that you understand different types of technologies, different type of unit operations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I should move to design and engineering. And maybe after 30 years of experience, I should decide whether to stay in the design and engineering or whether to go into management. Somehow I've stayed in design and engineering. It has been so interesting to be working in Technip so far.
What a visionary. So definitely someone who played a key role in the decisions you made for your career, certainly.
Yeah.
But why did you choose then to focus on the energy field? Why not, okay, AI was a bit, too advanced, but why not car manufacturing or agri-food industry? Why the energy field and energy transition in particular?
Okay. The place where I was born and raised had a lot of large chemical industries, ancillaries and chemical industries around it. And therefore, there was always this question in my mind, why is this equipment so big? Why is this equipment so tall? And obviously, then chemical engineering featured right at the top of my life goals. So that was the first inspiration. And when I finished my engineering in 1990, 91, there was a boom in India for the refining and petrochemical because there was a major economic reform that was happening in the country at the time. There was a boom in refining and petrochemicals, and that is where the job opportunities were. And which makes me settle in the oil and gas field instead of looking at any other kind of industry. And petrochemicals, as you know, is heavily refinery and petrochemicals are heavily technology oriented. And technology has always been as a passion to me. And Technip Energies is now having technologies in its heart and its DNA, and which has been a kind of compelling reason for me to stay in this energy field. And now, more importantly, getting into energy transition.
So the place you were living in, the surroundings, and also the influence of your father's own career. Do you have memories or do you reflect on things about these topics, like your first interaction with something that sparked your interest? I'm thinking about that because I'm wondering how much the location you grow up in plays an influence in the decision you make in the future.
Now, as I told you, because my father had a big influence on my career aspirations. And he has taken us many times, once or twice a year. There was always an open door for the factories where he worked, where he was allowed to take his family around to show where he was working, of course, with all the safety precautions and everything around. And as a young boy, I was always curious and passionate about. I was always curious to know why such equipment, why there is a process scheme. And in those days, the control systems had large boards and lightings and everything around. So how is this working? How is that working? There was always that curiosity. And my father's colleagues were also quite impressed with the kind of questions that I was asking and almost the surrounding environment. Our family, our relatives, everybody then gave me the inspiration that I should choose engineering. Quite honestly, my interest was more towards physics and chemistry, not really in engineering. But then getting into engineering was an obvious choice, I would put it that way. I used to ask a lot of questions, and then at one stage, my father said, "Look, if you want answers for this question, you have to find it by yourself. So you do
gotta go do
engineering,
it.
and you get into chemical engineering. That's the way you will understand how things work."
Yeah, that's a good dad answer. You want answers, you gotta go find them yourself.
Yourself.
So you've been working at Technip Energies since 2005.
Yeah.
What are we doing right that grounded you in the company? I mean, someone like you, I've seen your profile. It's so extensive, and you still have so much passion about the work that you do. What is it that keeps you here, and what are we doing to ground you in this organization?
Okay, when I first joined Technip back in 2005, my daughter was just about 2.5 years old. And the previous job before joining Technip had a lot of travel. And I would say it was something like more than 75-80% of the time I was traveling. I wanted to really see my daughter grow. And an opportunity in Technip Malaysia gave me a kind of feeling, not really a confidence or something, but gave me a feeling that because they put me on a large project, and that gave me the feeling that yes, I would get a good work-life balance, being able to be at one place with minimal travel. And yes, the working culture, the working environment at Technip Malaysia was so impressive. It was like we were always kept busy, something or other, a proposal or a project or something. And this kind of a work-life balance that gave me, then made me feel that, okay, this is a place to work, and let us continue here. Added to that was the kind of wonderful opportunities, some of the wonderful opportunities that I had in Technip Malaysia. I'd be proud to say that. I'm not boasting, but it's a fact that back in 2007, when I said we should start doing LNG projects from KL office, from the Kuala Lumpur office, the then management said, okay, let's go. That was a real leadership kind of a statement,
Yeah.
Let's go. And we had no clue how to approach a client to get an LNG project with no experience, whatever. So we conducted a lot of roadshows. There was support from in those days, it was LNG business unit in Paris. We had support from some mentoring roles coming from there. And yes, such kind of wonderful opportunities was there. And Technip has given these such kind of beautiful opportunities to be a process manager, to supporting business development, handling a proposal, handling a project. And what makes me grounded here, then comes the biggest motivation, which so far, from 2005 to 2020, or 2020, I'd put it that way, we were doing conventional oil and gas projects. Then came the paradigm shift from a traditional business to new frontiers of energy transition. Now, this impetus that came from the company's leadership, executive leadership, towards energy transition, combined with the technological aspect, because we started identifying ourselves as a technology company and not a mere engineering company. So that is how we were marketing ourselves as a BD person. And the cohesive approach from all my co-workers makes everyday work interesting in Technip Energies, and that's one of the main reasons that I'm grounded here for so long.
Wow, that's so. It's a lot of trust in your adventurous thinking as well. What I'm gathering is that you've been having a lot of fun in these past 18 years doing different things, taking chances, and the company also believing in your capacity to deliver them.
No, and more importantly, I had a kind of a task. Okay, if you want to do LNG projects, Mani, you have to pull in a team. You have to develop the team. If you look at Kuala Lumpur office, we are quite confident of executing LNG projects. We've done a lot of mid-scale LNGs in China. The first floating LNG for Petronas, which was a flagship project, about which you can talk much later. So these kind of good opportunities and also working in these kind of projects allowed me to expand my network all the way from Perth to Houston. And I'm sure many officers, they know me, at least they know me by name. Not know me by my face. People know that there is a person called Mani.
Okay, with this vast experience and adventures you've taken over the past 18 years, can you tell me one great achievement or success that you're so thrilled about having accomplished? And also, I'm interested to know, because you've tried so many things, you've done so many things, what are some of the mistakes you've made?
Yeah, of course, because success just tells a story. It doesn't give you a lesson, but failures give a lesson. Failures tell a story and give us a lesson. Okay. So let's talk about some of the successes first. For me, the two flagship projects that I was involved from concept to commissioning, performance test, and even debottlenecking of the project was the first onshore LNG and the first offshore LNG that was executed from Kuala Lumpur office. And my role was a process manager, starting from business development stage, supporting the business development team, preparing the proposal, then attending all the negotiations, and then getting the contract and sitting back in the project. So started with doing the business development, prepare the proposal, and then come into the project as a process lead or a process manager for the first onshore LNG project in China and the first offshore LNG project in Malaysia, which was the FLNG. That was the first FLNG that was commissioned, that was started, that was relocated, the first FLNG to be relocated, which proved the concept that FLNG is relocatable, because FLNG relocation still remains on paper otherwise. So the first FLNG relocation, and now that first FLNG, which was installed in Malaysia, relocated about 200, 300 kilometers away to a new destination. And now the client is planning to relocate it from Malaysia to Argentina. So it's going to cross the Indian Ocean. So these two projects for me was a big success, which will remain etched in my memory forever. Now, in terms of failures, yes, we have seen several failures. We've learned lessons from it. And most importantly, I would say, even when we were doing the Petronas FLNG, there were certain critics within the client's team who did not believe that this project will ever be started and it can run at full capacity. So I proved them wrong. It was like a baptism of fire, I'd put it if I can. I had to prove them wrong. And that was a lot of lessons learned from that, how to handle the client. It was a test of my interpersonal skills. It was a test of my technical skills, communication skills, everything. Convincing the client, just not convincing. I had to inspire them to believe that this design will work. So to say, I take the ownership of the design. As a process manager, I take the ownership of the design. I stayed there I wanted to see that the performance test is done. When the performance test was done, all those critics, they appreciated. And some of them even went on record to say that, sorry for our statements, we know now this plant works.
Wow.
Now, on other failures, we lost a few key proposals just because of a typographical error. Some information which is not supposed to be put in the technical proposal was mistakenly put in. And just some clerical errors. These projects were actually seen as low-hanging fruits. We had put in a lot of effort for the business development to get pre-qualified and everything. And then when the client calls us and says that, sorry, your proposal is disqualified because of these kind of clerical errors. No, because it's a government project, and then it gets difficult. So the lesson learned at the time was perfection. It is speed, accuracy, precision that leads to perfection. Because the time available for preparing the proposal is short, so we have to be fast, we have to be accurate, and we have to be precise.
Oh, fantastic! I like that your successes are somehow also attached to the lessons learned, or let's say the failures, because you use so much of it to improve on your execution. That's great.
No, one more lesson learned was don't be complacent with any success.
Right. It doesn't mean you'll always be successful, right? No. As well.
Being successful once doesn't guarantee success the next time. You cannot be complacent. You have to continue to maintain that kind of speed, accuracy, precision, and perfection. It's important.
So in these 18 years of learning lessons, what are the projects then that you've worked on or that you were a part of or orchestrated that you wear it as a medal that you're so proud of? Because you've talked a lot about firsts and uniques, and I wonder, in the sea of so many of firsts and unique projects, what are the ones that stand out to you the most?
Okay, the way we started doing LNG projects in Kuala Lumpur is back in 2005 when I joined in Malaysia. At the time, when I joined Technip Malaysia, at the time, Malaysia and Indonesia were the largest producers of LNG in the world. That was before Qatar took over then. And for me, launching those first two LNG projects out of the Kuala Lumpur office and building a team from scratch, building a design from scratch,
Right.
was definitely something that I can be proud of. Now, at one time, my boss used to ask me, Mani, he said, okay, are you having enough people to work with? I said, look, we have 85 process engineers in the department. And if I can get one idea from each of them, I will have 85 ideas. The
Right.
rationale behind that is I'm a team player.
Mm.
When I'm sitting as a process lead or as a process manager with 25, 30 people working with me on a project, I had to give an equal opportunity for everybody to receive their ideas. I have to be inclusive. I cannot reject any idea, however silly
Mm-hmm.
it is. I still have to listen to them because that's the way we groom young engineers, allow them to speak. So the two LNG projects that I mentioned was definitely something that makes me proud. Apart from that, I was also involved in many other refinery and petrochemical projects. For example, the Longson Petrochemicals, which we are doing in Vietnam. I was heavily involved in the proposal stage and the negotiation. Unfortunately, for the execution, I could not put in myself because I was busy with another project. And there were also many other proposals which were quite interesting, which we have secured, which were small in value, but small in monetary value, but big, very big in technical value.
With the experience you have, can you tell us how do you see this field of engineering and the energy industry in the next decades? Because I'm very new to the industry and I've seen it kind of transform so rapidly. Um, and I wonder what's in the future for us. And I feel like you have the answers, Manny.
Okay, one thing what is definitely going to be there is gas and liquefied natural gas are here to stay for at least another 3 or 4 decades until 2060 or 2070. It's not going to leave us because the world has realized that there is a need for clean energy, and gas gives you that clean energy compared to liquid or solid fuels. So it's going to stay there, and probably after that it may saturate. And the same way that the nuclear power lasted in most of Europe. It had seen a peak at one stage. People were telling there is no peak for nuclear power. It is going to continuously go up. But indeed, it has reached a saturation. And the sad story is some of the nuclear plants they want to close.
Right.
Of course, gas and energy will not close down. At least sitting today, looking 40, 50 years ahead, I don't think they're going to close down so quickly. And the second thing is how I foresee the field of engineering and technology. Any technological advancement will shape the field of engineering in the future. So it's only through technological advancement. And process technology can and must play a key role in enhancing the profitability. And I'm sure Technip Energies today is going in that direction. And those who work productively in the technology development, either their own proprietary technology development or a technology development collaboration with a licensor, and those who position themselves as technology leaders will rank first in this business. And I'm convinced that technology engineering can actually make more sustainable world for us, especially R&D.
Now I'm just thinking about, the fact that you have such an international experience. You've worked with so many different projects, and I imagine that you mentioned having 85 engineers working with you in a department. What influence do you bring from your culture then to this work environment?
The one thing is on the value systems that we were taught both at home and at school, in the primary school and secondary school, because the school I studied was a Catholic school under pastoral guidance.
Oh,
And home also had a lot of influence, the values that we learned. So some of the philosophies I would still adapt, I'm still adapting, is from the famous Hindu gospel called the Bhagavad Gita, which had a lot of philosophies. And when it comes to doing your duty, there is a separate chapter on that. You it says, do your profession for the sake of the profession and do it in the sense of the profession. Because profession is permanent. Salary, job titles, victory, defeat, loss, profit, they're all temporary. It will come, it will go. So this was also a grounding advice from my father, from my parents, I put it this way. Work in the profession for the sake of the profession, then the rest will automatically follow. So don't chase your work for the sake of salary. Salary should follow. You should not be chasing salary. So that's the first rule. And second rule is balance between rules and principles, which basically means whatever you do it within ethics. Bend the rules without breaking it. Yes, you need to have a rule to be followed, but a rule cannot be done as one size fits all, that it can be applicable always. You need to balance between rules and principles. So bend the rules, but don't break it. So that's
Bend the rules, but don't break it.
Yeah.
Wow. I like that. And then, so let me ask you then a question that maybe other young engineers who are listening might appreciate. If you were in school today, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
One thing what I would do differently is today there is a lot of attraction. And with the attraction comes the distraction. So one of the biggest attraction is the mobile phone or a gadget in your hand, as it has both advantages and disadvantages. So that attraction leads to distraction. So when we were at school, we did not have those distractions. So if you wanted to learn something, if you wanted to search something, we had to go to the library.
Mm-hmm.
Today, you don't have to go to the library. You can ask Google, or even you can ask what they call Chat GPT,
Yes.
AI kind of things. No, I would always say explore things yourself, and I'll continue to do that. If I have to go to the school and give some advice, I'll say explore things yourself, learn the world through experience.
That's great. So it's like a mixture of what your dad was telling you way back when, go find the answers on your own, do your own research. But he was also telling you to go into the technology side, get into AI.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of both things. I guess you have to find a balance between having all of the attractions that won't distract you, I guess. Thank you so much, Mani, for this really lovely conversation. It was so nice to hear from you, and I hope that there's the audience in your hometown that is listening in, and that is very proud of the achievements that you've been able to conquer so far. And I know for sure that your dad would be super impressed with how things turned out in your career choices. And so that brings us to the end of our podcast today. Hope you enjoyed listening and learned something new from our guest. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platforms. And we'll be back soon with another fascinating topic and an expert and someone who's going to bring us breaking boundary stories. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.